this happened here in Orlando. So one of the first things that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to share with you guys. I'm going to share with you guys the body cam footage of what happened with Derek Diaz. Now, I'm going to say this again. For all of you that are watching, if, things like this disturb you heavily, then I say would be the time to look away, or if you're on the rewatch, just go further into the stream. So I'll be showing these really quickly just so that people get a synopsis of what's going on. So, all right, so let me share my screen really quick so that we know exactly what happened to Derek Diaz, because a lot of times people are going to go, yeah, but he's no angel. You get people who say things like that. Let's get what exactly happened so that we have a good context of everything so that we can move on from there. So this was on July 3rd, by the way, just to let any of you guys know. So this was 15 days ago. This was shared by 50 Shades of Way. Shout out to 50 Shades of Way, always putting out some information and context. So appreciation to them. So here it is. This is in downtown Orlando, by the way. So in my city.
Yo, turn off the car. Turn it off. Yeah, it's in your hand, right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in this hand and that hand.
My bad.
Now, give me that. Give me the other one and put your hands on the steering wheel right now.
My bad.
Don't move.
Now, as we can see, he is obeying orders. They just rolled up. I didn't see any lights or anything. I just see them rolling up on him, right? They just walked up on him. He was just chilling, windows down, right? How many of us have had food where we had some tin foil and we were just, balling up about to throw it away, right? Okay. So far, he's obeying orders. He's being compliant. Let's continue.
Word. Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Are you guys good? Yeah. You guys shoot?
Yeah, I did.
43 shots fired.
See how quick that was? See how fast that happened? Now, there is another body cam footage from the other officer on the opposite side. So we're going to go to this one too. This is the opposite side.
On you.
Now you see his hands on the steering wheel.
Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
That quickly.
Are you guys good? Yeah. You guys shoot?
Yeah, I did.
43 shots fired.
Y'all already know what I'm about to say. No, you know exactly what y'all know exactly what I'm about to say. You know. Any of you have watched my channel or watched me on RBN, you guys know what I'm thinking right now. They just walked up out of nowhere. Let's go to I have a video I want to show. Actually, let me do this really quick first. So I'm going to share what 50 Shades of Way said. It says, a police officer in Orlando, Florida, shot and killed Derek Diaz, 26 years old, who was sitting in a car minding his business. Cops can't just harass innocent people over BS and then murder them. Jose Velez should face charges for this. By the way, the police officer is also Latino. 50 Shades of Way continues, says, these thugs will pull up on you while you're sitting peacefully in a car, and they'll point guns at you, your grandma, your dogs, etc. Whoever, and it's effing BS. Tell me where in the U.S. Constitution it says that cops can harass and shoot people for minding their business. Cops who abuse their power and provoke innocent people to play a life or death game of Simon Says are murderers. And they can try to dress it up and all the legal BS they want to get off the hook. But it doesn't change the fact that they're state-sanctioned murderers. This was a state-sanctioned murder. I don't care what nobody says. And people can try to dress this up as goes, oh, but he moved a little too quickly. When you are in a moment of distress, when you are extremely anxious, sometimes your movements may become a little bit erratic. Because when you got somebody, two people on either side of you pointing guns at your face, you're like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you're just like, you're just trying to obey their orders. And you're like, you're just like, you don't know what to do. And so you're like, do I just show my hands to see that they're not empty? Or do I keep my hands on the wheel? What do I do? He was nervous as hell. And then look, because you don't know. They just rolled up on you. Right? Let's go to the newsreel. This reached national news. Let's go.
Orlando police have released body camera footage showing the moments when an officer shot and killed a 26-year-old man. Derek Diaz died last week on July 3rd. Orlando's police chief says this all started as a drug investigation, and the officer who fired the gun thought that Diaz was reaching for a gun. Now, Diaz's family is demanding answers. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo is following this story for us. Stephen, This all started as a drug investigation, and the officer who fired the gun thought that Diaz was reaching for a gun. Now,
first of all, this is one of the reasons why we talk about how the war on drugs needs to end. Because if we didn't have this war on drugs, and if we at least decriminalized drugs, things like this wouldn't happen. But yet, Every single time it's, oh, well, we thought they had drugs. Then the police end up killing somebody. Even if he had drugs, even if he did. Does that mean justification for an extrajudicial killing? Even if, right? So what? So what? I'm going to show you guys something. As well as, so what even if he had a gun? Because I'm going to share something with you guys. So what even if he had a gun? So what even if the gun didn't have a permit? Want to know why I say that? Let me share with you guys. So what? Because it's the law. This is from Pensacola News Journal. Florida residents, including in Orlando, can legally carry a firearm without permit starting July 1st. So 2 days before, even if he had a gun, he was legal within his right in the state of Florida to have a gun. It says, but there is a long list of exceptions and rules that go along with having the law. The Florida state voted for HB 543 in March, and DeSantis quickly signed it, making Florida the 26th state that does not require a concealed weapons license. So even if he did have a gun, doesn't matter. So if you're a police officer in the state of Florida, then why in the hell are you getting so trigger happy? Why are you okay or in favor of this law? Why are you cool with DeSantis? Doesn't this, you as a police officer, technically make your job a little bit more difficult? Because now they can have a conceal. They don't even have to have a license. They can conceal carry. So yeah, that's why I said, so what if he did? Does this warrant an extrajudicial killing? Let's continue.
Diaz's family is demanding answers. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo is following this story for us. Stephen, this body cam footage, we should warn people, might be disturbing to some of our viewers. What can you tell us? What does it show?
Yeah, disturbing indeed, Kate. Diaz's family has been asking for this video ever since that shooting happened back on July 3rd. Orlando police releasing 3 different angles from the officers who were there, their body-worn camera footage here. We do want to listen to how this started. We do also want to note this video was blurred by the police department.
Don't move. Word. Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Well, that was Officer Jose Velez. He asked Diaz there, who's 26 years old, to hand over something that he had in his hand. It was wrapped in aluminum foil. Then, as we heard, tells him to put his hands on the steering wheel. At some point, it seems like the right hand, Diaz's right hand, goes toward the center console. And that is when Velez fires those shots and immediately backs away from that scene. And the other officers involved, their videos were released as well. That was the best angle that we see. We should note, however, there was no weapon that was actually found there at the scene, Kate.
Of course, there was no gun found on his person. Of course. But I'm going to say something that's going to be a little bit controversial to a lot of people, and it is what it is. You are more likely to find a gun on a white person than you are to find a gun on a black or brown person. Let's be real. You are more likely to find a gun on a white person than you are to find a gun on a black or brown person. That's the way it is in this country. The data shows. And yet, they are way more scared of black and brown people than they are of anybody else. Guns per capita are higher amongst white people than they are amongst black people. Yet, because of white supremacy, because of racism and internalized white supremacy, because yes, it can be an internalized. This is why I say that cops who are other than white, they're blue first, and then whatever the race they are second. So even still, they will look at people who are darker than alabaster as a threat. And Derek was unarmed, had no weapons on his person, no weapons in the car, nothing. So was he really reaching for the center console? What was he reaching for? It wasn't a weapon. Maybe, just maybe, he just touched it. But a lot of people aren't going to give him that grace, that deference. They're just going to say, well, he reached for the center console. What was he getting? There was nothing in the car. So why was his murder justified? Let's continue.
Okay, that's important. Diaz's family and one of their attorneys I know spoke at a press conference, Stephen, earlier today. What did they say?
Yeah, as you can imagine, they were upset. They say they do have some answers now, but not enough. They want to read that police report. That has not happened yet. Here's more of what Diaz's daughter's mother.
Do we really care what the police report says? Hang on. Hold up. Do we really care what the police report says? It's all on video. Do any of you actually give a shit what the police report says? I don't. I certainly don't. Because it's all there in 4K for me to see. It's clear. I don't care what the police report says. Because they're going to say something different than what the video actually says. They're going to lie anyway. Why does the police report matter? Especially when you have video evidence. I'm telling you, boy. I'm telling you.
Mother had to say.
The video was so sickening to watch. I watch it. Then we got to watch the 3 videos. One time they said we had to leave, and that was it.
All of this is about police training. Yes. And we want to make sure that police are being trained to deal with citizens, especially in the downtown area where a lot of the college students are, where there's a lot of young people.
Now, we should note, Kate, police say that after he was shot, Diaz threw something out of the window. Difficult to see in the video. The family has questions about that. State agencies are now investigating.
All right, Stephen Romo following that. Thank you.
I don't care what the hell he threw out the window. It still didn't justify his murder. There was no weapon. And even if there was a weapon, it is legal in the state of Florida. Even someone who has a weapon and they draw it against someone who has a weapon drawn against them, that would have been idiotic, because you literally have 2 people on either side with their weapons drawn. You can't even draw a weapon because you know you're about to get got. And yet, they're like, oh, he has a weapon. So what? It's Florida. There's racist pigs everywhere, ironically. And so this is Florida. This is the way it is. And this is the way it is across this nation, where police can shoot you with impunity. By the way, that police officer is on paid administrative leave, meaning they got a vacation. They're on vacation. So basically, after shooting someone with impunity, you'll get a vacation. Doesn't matter if what you did was just outright cold-blooded murder. Damn, this is good. It doesn't matter if you got, you outright cold-blooded murdered somebody. You still get a vacation. Is that why? And here's the crazy part. And a lot of people talk to me about this and they're like, well, they just need, more training. In a institution that is racist, in an institution that has harmed people for the state to protect property, there is no amount of training that can fix the problem. None. And they said that, oh, well, it's typically a bad area. Why is it a bad area? Because the bad area has poverty. And whenever you have poverty, it raises the rate of crime. People will commit crimes of opportunity and desperation in impoverished areas because they are in poverty. Let me ask you this question. Would a rich area be considered a bad or drug-ridden area? Do you know how many rich people do drugs? How much illegal activity happens with rich people? But because they're rich, you don't see police all up and through their neighborhoods. But in poor areas, you'll see it. And these crimes that are enforced, the crimes that are committed by the people in poor areas are enforced more heavily because they're poor. That's the only reason why. If you got rid of the poverty in the area, would they commit as many crimes? No, they wouldn't. They would not commit as many crimes because the crimes that they commit are crimes against poor people. If you didn't have to worry about housing, if you didn't have to worry about food, if you didn't have to worry about being demonized for drug use, how many more people will be taken in to jail or shot dead because of a crime committed? How many? We all know the answer to that. And yet, this is what happens when you have austerity and allow for poverty in this system. Poverty is a feature of this system, not a bug. That's how capitalism operates. This is why people like myself are police abolitionists, prison abolitionists in this country. If you guys have not heard of 10 Demands for Justice, I highly recommend that you guys go there and go to 10 Demands for Justice, because this is a extremely well-made resource so that you can use this resource to educate yourself and others about why defunding the police on the road to abolition is important. I'm going to say this. I am not a police abolitionist for all police all over the world. From what I hear, police have a great relationship with their citizens in places like Cuba, DPRK, China, Vietnam, places like that. Why? Because they realize that they serve the people, and their laws and systems surround so that the people are the ones who command and demand how the system operates. Instead, and also, it's people over property in those countries. Versus here in the United States, I want police and prison abolition within this system. So, if I were in Cuba, I would probably dab up the police. I'd be like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Because they serve the workers. See what I mean? There's a difference. They're actually community members that are actually working to help keep their community in order. But it's the order that the workers set up, not the order that the corporate dictators set up. See what I mean? And it's people over property. And they don't have private property in places like Cuba. So it's all public, which means that they just want to make sure everybody's safe. Safety within the police forces in the United States. They don't believe in public safety. They believe in property safety. Which means vandalism is more of an egregious act than somebody starving. That's what it is. They will, burn down a Walmart. That is more egregious than a family starving to death. That's how the system operates. Versus in DPRK or Cuba or China, they will look at a family starving as one of the most atrocious crimes. We don't give a shit about a store burning down. What about the family? Their priorities in more socialist countries are more directed at the health and safety of people. The focus here in the United States is the health and safety of corporate dictators and their property. It does not match up. Now, let's go to this. And I am trying to reach out to Derek Diaz's family. Hopefully I'll be able to contact them and, get in touch with them to get their perspective on everything that happened. But I'm reaching out to them. So here's the demands. So the first one, it says defund the police and reallocate resources to impacted communities. Excuse me. Okay, now the next one is demilitarize the police. So we all know that the military industrial complex, aka companies like Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all them, they actually get their militarized tools, their guns, their tanks from these military companies so that they can fight against who? Us. It's not against, no, it's the fight against us. And they're like, whoa, it's the fight against crime. What crimes are people committing that you need to have tanks and military grade weapons against them? Also, let's not forget what they're trying to do in Atlanta with Cop City. Right? Cop City is an extreme form of militarizing the police. Let's continue. Number 3 is eliminate discriminatory policing, prosecution, and sentencing. So it's not just the police, it's also the prosecutors and the courts. It's the prosecutors and the courts. So really, when we say it is systemic, then that means it's not just police, it's the prosecutors, attorney generals, judges, both the city, state, appellate, circuit, and Supreme Court judges. All of them need to be reformed. Not reformed, but it needs to be, the system needs to be replaced. So that's what's important. We have to focus in on that. Next one. Institute complete law enforcement transparency and accountability. That's self-explanatory. Really, it should be a board of people who public safety officers should have to answer to. And this board should be independent and should not be subject to any type of financial influence whatsoever. Number 5, independently investigate all police crimes and abuses of power. Again, this should be done just by citizens. Hell, you know what? This should also be heavily influenced by people who serve time. It should be heavily influenced by people who serve time. So if you serve prison time, you should be put at the top of the list to investigate. Yep. You should be put at the top of the list. Now, let's continue. Install community representation, oversight, and safety measures. This is self-explanatory. This is what I was just speaking about a little bit. 7, end strategic counter-protest violence. Like Cop City, this is what's important. Look what they did with Cop City. They murdered Tortuguita, riddled them with bullets, just for sitting crisscross applesauce with their hands up in the air. Riddled them with bullets because they dared to sit in the forest and stop construction crews from building a militarized police center so that they can use the militarized police to come up against us whenever we express our First Amendment rights. That's how it is in this country. Next one. Apologize and provide reparations. We're going to be getting into this in a little bit as well. But apologies need to be made. Sincere apologies and reparations. Because of all the drugs that have come through our neighborhoods, of all the arresting and disproportionate arresting for drug possession, being put in prison, also being enslaved while in prison, because remember, like I said many times on this channel before, the 13th Amendment didn't completely abolish slavery. It only just moved slavery into a different sector of our society. So people who were actually held in prison as well, who were forced to work, also deserve reparations. I said what I said. including some members of my family, just for being in prison and forced to work. Now, number 9 says, end the war on drugs. Now, this is a special part. Let me read this really quick. It says, end the criminalization of drug use and drug addiction. Like I said, if we had ended the war on drugs, Derek Diaz would still be alive. It says, pass the CARE Act of 2019, expunge all nonviolent drug-related convictions, and in lieu of arrest, provide mental health, behavioral health, and addiction recovery services nationwide. I'm going to stop right there. By the way, the biggest and most prolific gateway drug in this nation is trauma, PTSD from living in impoverished conditions. Trauma is the gateway drug. You don't think that living in poverty doesn't cause trauma? That's the gateway drug. That's what a lot of people don't get. Trauma. So when somebody picks up cocaine, when they pick up Molly, when they pick up crack, when they pick up methamphetamines, when they abuse opiates. Why? Trauma. So really, it is a medical issue, not a criminal one. This is why, if you're going to have a war on drugs, it shouldn't be police officers that fight it. It should be doctors, psychiatrists, counselors. If you want to have a war on drugs, fine, but switch the tool. Have doctors, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists fighting the war on drugs, not police. If you want to fight the war on drugs, then you need to change the U.S. foreign policy that is making it so that they're making money off the drugs in these countries where they are being produced. Change the U.S. foreign policy, stop sanctioning these countries, and leave them the hell alone. Hell, I would go further and take some of that money away from the money that you're providing to the state of Israel and give it to Nicaragua and Honduras and Colombia and Venezuela. Give them the money and then leave their countries. Leave them alone. And let them rebuild and let them actually provide for their people, so then they won't have to make money off of drug trade. Also end the CIA, because CIA was actually some of the people who are actually making money off the drug trade too. But a lot of people don't talk about that. And then the last one, as you guys can see, carceral punishment. And this is something that I think should be the final step. It says, free everyone in jails, prisons, youth facilities, and detention centers, beginning immediately with the elderly, disabled, immunocompromised, nonviolent offenders, undocumented immigrants, criminalized survivors, and those held on bail or for parole violations. Free all political prisoners. So this is people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, people like Julian Assange is in a different country, but also he's a political prisoner, including Leonard Peltier, Mumia Abu-Jamal. Says remove except as punishment for crime from the 13th Amendment. This is the exception in the 13th Amendment that allows for slavery. that people don't think about. It says ban solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is also torture. So when they put you in solitary confinement, that is torture. If you're put in away from the general population and you have to stay in there 23 hours a day, that is torture. It says decriminalize misdemeanor offenses and probation parole violations. Repeal all 3 strikes habitual offender laws. Ban the box. End the school to prison pipeline. Ending the school to prison pipeline is something I think is really important too, because there should not be police officers walking the halls in a school. We had police officers in my elementary school when I was growing up, especially in schools in the hood. Palmetto Elementary, 4th grade, yeah. We have police officers. They will walk the halls, and then they will also teach the DARE program. Yep. The higher the grade you went, the more the police presence. So we have more police officers in middle school. In fact, I had a class that was taught to me by a police officer in the 8th grade. My teacher was a police officer. And full police gear, firearm and all, teaching us classes about law. And he was black. If he saw me right now, and I was the quiet kid, I didn't say shit in class. And then high school, walking up and down the halls. Go to a predominantly black school and you will see police, especially in more poor, disadvantaged areas. You will see police in the halls. It says repealing truancy laws, removing police, surveillance technologies, metal detectors from schools, and eliminating school zero-tolerance disciplinary policies. Suspensions and expulsions. Close all local jails. Eliminate the prison industrial complex. Closing all privately owned prisons. Terminating all contracts with private companies that profit off prisons, and banning all police foundations. There are companies like American Airlines and Victoria's Secret that actually use slavery. I'm not going to call it prison labor. It's slavery. So next time you guys go to Victoria's Secret in the mall, just realize some of those panties and drawers were actually made by slaves. Whenever you guys need to call up American Airlines, that person you're speaking on the phone to, a slave. Yeah. Every single time you go to McDonald's, you want those 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun? And guess what? The 2 all-beef patties were made by slaves. Slaves. They also deserve reparations. And I think McDonald's should be one of the first people to pay it out. And how did I know that whole thing about 2 all-beef patties from McDonald's? I have no idea. Gosh, I really need to get out more. In all new prison construction, we don't need new prison construction. We have the highest amount of prisoners in the world. We're 4% of the population of the world, and yet we have 25% of the world's prisoners. Yeah, we don't need new prisons. In pretrial detention, cut funding from prosecutors' offices, abolish ICE, end immigration detention, and mandate legal immigration status priority to ICE detainees and their families. eliminate civil commitment, eliminate all carceral alternatives to incarceration, and implement measures for intervention, prevention, and education. Abolish the death penalty. There are too many people who are killed in our system simply who are innocent. And then you find out later, oh, we accidentally killed them because the DNA showed that they didn't deserve to die because they were innocent. Implement a reparative, transformative justice model in place of the current system. So, yes. So, share this site with all of your neighbors and friends. And the thing is that even if you are pro-police, even if, right? Let's say you're pro-police. Why do you feel that police should be subject to having to do all these different types of jobs? Why? If you're pro-police, why? Doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't have to. If you're pro-police, then you should be like, no. If they're there for law enforcement, then we should redo a lot of these laws so that they won't have to, be subject to having to deal with people who have mental health issues, or dealing with drug intervention, or dealing with kicking people out of their homes. Like, look, how many police would be needed if we didn't have to evict people anymore because we treated housing as a human right? How much police will be needed if everybody had food as a human right? How many? If we decriminalize all drugs, how many police officers will we need if they didn't need to enforce drug enforcement laws? See what I mean? How many police will we need if we didn't have cash bail? How many will we need? And then we can focus on the serious stuff. And then we can focus on why some of these people commit the serious crimes that they do. And then we can get to the root of the problem. Nobody ever wants to get to the root of the problem. They only want to treat the symptoms. Now, for the family of Derek Diaz, there is a GoFundMe. Yes, it is also in the description below, but I want to highlight the GoFundMe for the family. This is organized by Derek Diaz's mother, Yaneri. So far, they're about a little over halfway to their goal. I want them to triple their goal. I want them to have more than enough. I want it so that they don't have to work for a couple years. I actually, you know what? Fuck it. I want them to have 10 times their goal. Instead of 20,000, I want them to get 200,000. Because guess what? They went through something horrific. Here's the GoFundMe in the chat. And share that link in this story. Even if you don't share my clip of this, share this story, period, because what happened to Derek is completely unjust, but it is a symptom of the system. And it is absolutely horrific what happened to him. I'm going to read what his mother stated because this is her words. And I want to hear from what she had to say. She says, "Hello, everyone. I am Yaneri Diaz, the mother of Derek Diaz. On July 3rd, 2023, around 2 a.m., the Orlando Police Department wrongfully shot and killed my son. He was only 26 years old and leaves behind a 5-year-old daughter who loves him dearly, as well as his younger brother, our family, loved ones, and myself. My heart is torn apart. I lost my best friend, my everything, my entire world in the hands of people that are supposed to protect us, not kill innocent people." The police report states that he was in a rough area of downtown, and they were conducting proactive patrols when they became suspicious of him. Why were they suspicious? That's my biggest question. They state during the stop that he made a movement to retrieve a gun, but no firearm was ever discovered. My son died alone at the hospital. Oh my gosh. Derek did not have a weapon on him. He has never owned or possessed a firearm in his life. This happened just one day after the new law was passed in Florida for residents to be allowed to concealed carry firearms without a permit. My son was killed just 24 hours later. It seems the police are now on high alert, scared and trigger happy. Derek is yet another victim of police brutality and poor police training. Due to the police officers who stopped him being poorly trained, there is another child in this world who is going to be growing up without their father. There is another boy who is going to grow up without their brother, and another mother who lost her child. We need justice. Please share. Please talk about it. If you can help us with donations for his funeral cost, we would appreciate anything you are able to donate, especially if you did not have opportunity of knowing him personally. If you cannot donate, please just share so that we can spread the word of what has happened to my son and get justice." So funeral expenses. They need expenses just to be able to live their lives so that they do not have to work during this period, so that they can mourn their loss. It is hard to mourn when you have to go into work. It is hard to mourn when you have to cook. It's hard to mourn when you have to just operate. It's just, they should just have their expenses completely paid for dealing with this. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, we live in a system where you have to mourn, period. Even if you lose a loved one, you have to work, you have to pay for rent and all this other stuff while mourning. I honestly think that we should have a system where people should have all their expenses paid when a loved one passes. Does that sound wild? Is that very radical of me? I don't think that you should have to pay for these things if you're in mourning, because that's tragic. You should not have to pay for funeral expenses in this country. I said what I said. You should not have to pay for burial. You should not have to pay for cremation. You should not have to pay for it. It should all be publicly funded. That's what I think. Someone's funeral and burial should not be worth more than somebody else's. Every human life, if every human life is precious, then everybody should get the opportunity to bury their loved ones without having to be gate kept from doing it properly. I'm done with the financial gatekeeping. I'm done with it. I just lost my grandmother a couple months ago. That expense should have not fallen on my family one iota. And it shouldn't fall on Derek Diaz's family. In fact, Derek Diaz should still be alive. True justice would mean that he would never, excuse me, even have had to endure that contact with police. True justice would have meant that we wouldn't have had this war on drugs, period. True justice would have meant that that area wouldn't have been a bad area because we shouldn't have had poverty. Not in this country. See how it affects us all?